Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Aron Nimzowitsch, my system. The customary quote: tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn. From the American polymath and one of the founding fathers of the United States, Benjamin Franklin. A brief review of the last part where we completed chapter 6, the elements of endgame strategy of the first part of the book, the elements. After discussing the concept of materialization of file or rank with examples and then went through some endgame illustrations given by Nimzowitsch. So now, moving further into the book, we begin chapter 7, the pin. Nimzowitsch begins the chapter with introductory and general remarks with the heading Introductory and General Tactics or Strategy on the possibility of introducing a pinning motif which has had to be abandoned. Nimzowitsch writes, after the difficult 6th chapter, difficult at any rate in the positional sense, the present one may appear very easy, and the question may perhaps be asked whether the pinned piece can really be spoken of as an element in our sense, since the game may be laid out on the basis of an open file or a passed pawn, but surely never of a pin. This point of view we cannot share. True, pins as a rule occur in purely tactical moments, as for instance in the pursuit of the fleeing enemy. On the other hand, however, a pin foreseen in the planning of a game may quite logically influence its whole course. In connection with this possibility, game number 5, P. Qhinn versus Guise is of special interest. The 25th move by black, bishop g6, signifies a resuscitation or reviving of the pin motif which had been dead since the 7th move. For now there is threatened an advance when occasion serves against the objective, white's pawn at h3 by h5 and g4 by black. The original white move h3 was, however, conceived as a parry to the threatening pin, and hence stands in logical connection with that motif. Consequently, the attack on white's h-pawn should also be reckoned as a logical variation on the same theme, the pin motif, and this despite the fact that in the game as played, black did not pursue the adventure involved in, or rather restarted by the 25th move by black, bishop g6, but contritely or remorsefully returned to the e-file, whereupon virtue found reward. But this is quite immaterial, for it could easily have happened otherwise. What is of importance is that we should have learned the great strategic range of the pin motif. Please note we shall go through this game towards the end of the video series along with other remaining games from the illustrative games section of the book. Once the series is complete, you can fast forward towards the last few videos to look up the game. Moving further, Nimzowitsch discusses about wholly and half-pinned pieces and exchange combinations on the pinning square with the heading, the conception of the wholly and half-pinned piece. The defense a pinned piece can give is but imaginary. Exchange combinations on the pinning square equals to the square on which the pinned piece stands, and the two distinct motives for such combinations. Nimzowitsch writes, to a pin there belong 3 actors. Number 1, the pinning piece. Number 2, the pinned enemy piece, and number 3, the piece standing behind the pinned piece. The first attacks the third across the second. That is to say, the pinned piece stands in the way of the capture of the piece behind it by the pinning pieces. And for shortness, we shall call them the pinning, the pinned, and the screened piece. The screened piece is usually of noble blood, that is, king or queen, or otherwise it would not be likely to hide itself behind another piece. All 3 actors stand either in the same file or the same diagonal. Consider the skeleton position on board. The pinned piece dare not move, since if they did, the piece behind them would be exposed to the attack from which it had previously been screened. If this immobility is absolute, that is, if the pinned piece dare make no move whatever, that piece is said to be wholly pinned. If, on the other hand, the pinned piece has any squares at their disposal in the line of the pin to which they can move, they are said to be only half pinned. In the position on board, the pin by the rook is only half a pin, since the move h5 is possible. A pinned knight is always wholly pinned. Of other pieces, we may say that a piece can only half pin one of its own kind. For instance, consider the skeleton position on board. Here, the black bishop at c6 is only half pinned. The black bishop can move anywhere in the diagonal c6 to h1. A pawn can only be wholly pinned by a diagonally moving piece. If the pin is in a column or file, the pinning piece must block the pinned pawn. For example, the skeleton position on board, in order to enforce complete immobility. But such immobility has really no connection with the pin. It could equally be the result of the blockade. A pinned piece's defensive power is only imaginary. They only make a gesture as if they would defend. In reality, they are crippled and immobile. Hence, we may confidently place our piece on pre or exposed to capture to a pinned piece, for they dare not lay hands on it. An example will be found in the position on board. The winning moves, queen takes on g3 check or queen takes on a6 check, are easy to find. All we have to be sure of is that the black bishop at f4 or pawn at b7 is pinned. If this be the case, the points g3, a6, which seem to be protected, are really at our mercy. And so we may seek out such points which make a pretense of being protected and at once rightly declare them to be free as air. How simple! And yet the less experienced amateur would rather put their head in the lion's jaws than put their queen on pre. It is very often profitable to play for the win of the pinned piece. To us who know that every immobile or even weakly restrained piece tends to become a weakness, this fact will not appear surprising. But parallel with the problem of winning the pinned piece runs that of preventing its unpinning. for on this its mobility would be restored, and with that all its strength also. Apart from the fact that the possibility of an unpinning must always be kept in view, the fight to win a pinned piece proceeds on the usual lines, namely by multiplying attacks, and in the case of adequate protection, by thinning the ranks of the defenders. A clear profit may, however, sometimes be recorded, namely in the case when a pinned piece can be attacked by a pawn, for then this attack on it will be decisive. That this must be so follows from the consideration that a piece can only evade a pawn attack by flight. If, however, the piece is pinned, they are defenseless against an attacking pawn, since flight is denied to them. Consider the position on board. On the right, the course will be rook h1, g6, and then up will come the pawn g4. On the left, things are not made quite so easy for the pawns. There are one or two interferences to brush aside, and this is done by rook takes on a5, b takes on a5, b6, and white wins. In general, the plan of attack against a pinned piece calls for a great effort to secure that preponderance or majority in material which we have on various occasions particularized. That is to say, a majority of attackers over the defenders of our objective, which in this case is the pinned piece. But the ideal to be aimed at is the pawn attack, which not infrequently will crown the whole enterprise. For example, in the position on board, left side, it is plainly visible that a close investment of the pinned black pawn at b6 has been instituted. We may remark that the ideal result of this siege may be registered in the passive state to which the black defenders are reduced. But now the a pawn moves forward, and this advance leads to a more tangible result. In the same position on board, right side, the black knight at g7 is in a pitiful state of pin. The screened piece is represented here by the mating threat at h7. By the advance of the h-pawn, white prevents any unpinning of the knight by king h7 to g6. The pressure exerted on the pinned knight by the pieces alone is right grievous here, yet it does not lead to any immediate result. But now the f-pawn comes up with a dagger under their cloak and decides matters. And so, while the officers may put on pressure, at times this suffices for the win of the piece. And after all, an officer is not one to joke with. The proper person to execute the death sentence will always be the private soldier. Moving further, Nimzowitsch discusses the topic of the exchange combination on the pinning square. He writes, the first motive. Consider the position on board. In this position, the capture of the pinned black pawn at g7 may be our object. We pile up attacks. The preponderance or majority 3-2 has here already been achieved, and then find to our disappointment that the pawn jauntily or cheerfully advances. The beggar was not even pinned. or at best only half pinned. For though a capture by the black g-pawn would not be feasible, g6 is. The problem of how to win our objective is nevertheless easy of solution, and this by knight takes on g7, bishop takes on g7 and f6. The idea is that white substitutes the wholly pinned bishop for the half pinned pawn at g7. A substitution of this kind is our first motive. There is, however, still a knotty or complex question to answer, namely how white, notwithstanding the surrender of one of their attacking pieces, can yet maintain their preponderance or majority against the point g7. The answer, of course, lies in the fact that though black still has two of their original defenders, king and bishop, the bishop can no longer be regarded as a defender of the threatened point, but has themselves become the pinned object of our attack at that point. Whereas white still has their rook and the f-pawn, which close at hand is ready to plunge into the fray. So that the operation knight takes on g7, bishop takes on g7 puts out of action a piece on each side, and the relative preponderance or majority of white is unchanged. Moving on, Nimzowitsch gives an example from the famous opera game between Paul Charles Morphy versus Duke Karl and Count Isouard, please excuse my pronunciation, played in 1858 in Paris, France. Karl II, Duke of Brunswick, was a German noble, and Count Isouard de Vauban argues, a French aristocrat. Both were considered strong amateur players of the time, and they played the game in consultation with each other against Morphy. Nimzowitsch writes, the second motive. In the famous game, Morphy versus Duke of Brunswick and Count Isouard, after the moves e4, e5, knight f3, d6, d4, bishop g4, d takes on e5, bishop takes on f3, queen takes on f3, d takes on e5, bishop c4, knight f6, queen b3, queen e7, knight c3, c6, bishop g5, b5, knight takes on b5, c takes on b5, bishop takes on b5 check, and knight d7. The position of the pinned black knight at d7 was a very critical one. There followed castling long, the quickest way to unite the rooks for an attack in the d-file against the point d7, and rook d8. In this position, the simple doubling of the rooks in the d-file would win the knight. Rook d2, queen e6, rook d1, bishop e7, bishop takes on f6. But Morphy has a much stronger maneuver at his command. There followed rook captures on d7, rook takes on d7, and a rook d1. This exchange combination on the pinning square deserves our notice. Did it take place in order to substitute a wholly pinned piece for one which is half pinned? No, for the knight at d7 as it was wholly pinned. Would it have taken place if the white rook had already stood at d2? No, for in that case, doubling the rooks would have sufficed. The exchange combination was evidently carried out in order in the struggle for the point d7 to gain a tempo. Let us dispassionately consider the state of affairs before and after a rook takes on d7. Before this capture, white had two attackers against two real defenders. For the knight at f6 is half dead, and the queen is too great a personage and would cut a poor figure in a rough and tumble with minor pieces. After a rook takes on d7, white loses one attacker, whom he however at once replaces by a fresh rook, whereas the defending rook, which previously stood at d8, is irrevocably lost to black, as pointed out in our knotty or complex question discussion previously. Accordingly, white has profited to the extent of a fighting unit and has thus a preponderance or majority of forces in his fight for the pinned piece. The second motive, therefore, is the gain of a tempo. After queen e6, bishop takes on f6 would have won easily, but Morphy preferred the prettier method. Bishop takes on d7 check, and knight takes on d7, and now the knight is in its turn pinned because of the mating threat at d8. The knight is however forced to move, whereupon mate follows. Queen b8 check, knight takes on b8, and rook d8 checkmate. In the position on board, the pinning rook is attacked. To withdraw the rook would mean giving the enemy the tempo they need to get rid of the pin. For instance, rook b2, king a7, rook b1, and knight d6. The correct play is rook takes on b7, rook takes on b7, and now rook b1 wins for white. Since the sacrifice at b7 was made only to avoid the loss of a tempo, our second motive is obviously present. Alright, we conclude this part of Aron Nimzowitsch, my system here, and we shall continue onwards from the next one. Shout out to fellow streamer Moscatel87 for gifting 10 subs to viewers on my Twitch stream last week. Moscatel is a good chess player from Canada and streams chess occasionally as well. I will post a link to his stream, do check him out. Qhinn with a gifted sub, Blabs99, Distant 187, Offbeat Opener, emptywavefunction, and RockyMtnChess for continuing their subs. emptywavefunction, the top cheerer once again with 1200 bits, Nicola Stoyson at second with 1000 bits, fpawn at third with 150 bits, fellow streamers CL Smith and Dimmy the Trickster at fourth with 100 bits each. Dimmy is Dimitar Mardov, a 12-year-old young chess talent with a FIDE rating of close to 2300 and a national master title as well. He has a really nice instructions chess stream of his own on Twitch. Do check him out. I will post a link to his stream in the video description as well. Fellow streamer Matt Quick Chess at 5th with 10 bits. Matt Quick Chess is another talented chess player from the US, and a highlight of his chess career includes drawing a semi game with Anatoly Karpov in the 1990s. He has a fun chess stream of his own as well. Do check him out. I will post a link to his stream in the video description. Fellow streamer Escelius at 6th with 3 bits, and Goke09 at 7th with 1 bit last week as well. Thanks a lot for the kind support, everyone. Much appreciated. Alright, till next time, take care and stay safe.